Thank you so much for joining me today while we dive into the world of evidence-based wellness solutions and how our industry can get future ready through an innovative approach. And to talk about this exciting topic, I have invited Alina Hernandez as my co-host today. And Alina is an award winner, wellness concept creator, and the co-chair of the Mental Wellness Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute. And I had the honor last year to experience Alina firsthand when introducing me to some innovative wellness technology. And I must really say I was fascinated by her knowledge, passion, and futuristic thinking. And I am sure Alina will challenge also your thinking and approach about wellness today. Thank you so much for joining us today, Alina. Welcome.
Thank you, Verena. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for the invitation, and I'm excited to have our conversation.
Excellent. And audience, as you know, we always welcome your questions in the chat on the YouTube channel, and we will answer them towards the end of this talk. So please don't hesitate to put them in. But let's start, Alina. You just were back from the Global Wellness Summit, which was held in Miami last week. And the global wellness economy is booming more than ever. And to begin, I would love to get your insights, if you would be willing to share some of your top takeaways from this year's GWS.
Well, yeah, it was a really exciting summit in many ways. I have to give kudos to the GWS and to everyone to pivot the summit from Qatar to Miami. It was like having a tanker in the middle of the ocean. And then all of a sudden somebody says, okay, shift it to 180 degrees in the opposite direction in 5 minutes. And they did a brilliant job in doing that. And they delivered on the content. And I think to answer your question on the takeaways, what they delivered on most brilliantly, and I think this is the number one thing and their biggest USP, is that they know how to get people together and to get people talking. And this is something that they have managed to do in the most brilliant fashion to really evolve slowly a community. And so that this year we were able to have, in addition to content, it was my 10th. And I really found it to be very enriching because I got to the downside and the upside to having less people, which were, obviously because of the pivot, was that you were able to have really significant conversations and maybe do deep dives and revisit with old friends and colleagues and, deepen the relationships, which is in the way that we do business in our industry. And so I think that for me, that's the biggest takeaway of all. But then if I have to go down, let's say line item, I would say that sports are going more and more integration of the idea of sports into wellness formats, all kinds of business models for all different reasons, because sports also, does community very well. But more importantly, there are a lot of takeaways that the world of elite athletes can give us in the normal wellness, in our normal wellness routines and our wellness lifestyles. Then I want to say that there was a really big, a lot of conversation again about the democratization of wellness. And really the question of how is it that we can achieve this in a sustainable and more widespread way than we're currently doing. So the bar really needs to move on that. For me, it was really important that, wellness per se is not just a mental fix by a way of living. Again, the idea that wellness lifestyles really are only effective if continued over time. And the idea, again, of long-term behavioral change and how do we help the guest, the client, to really move on that bar of not just experiencing something in the space or even in a retreat, because when you go home, most of the time it doesn't stay. So looking for that big takeaway, what are those big takeaways and how can we sustain them over time? And then just to kind of finish off on this, I am a woman, and I'm going to say this. This was big and written all over the walls at GWS. The future is female. because we talked about the lack of gender equality,
Mhm.
and not in terms of whether men and women are treated the same, but really the fact is that even in gender medicine, the new field of gender medicine and science, and that is spilling over to gender wellness. I'm starting to call it gender wellness, and we
Wow.
need to call it gender wellness, because wellness protocols as well as clinical medical protocols should not be created equal. Men and women have very, very different needs, and can be often misdiagnosed because these diagnoses are normally studied for men instead of women. So those are my really big takeaways.
Those are very valuable takeaways. And now, just your last one with the gender wellness, I think that would be worth another talk. Um,
We'll have it. I got a lot on that one. But really, I think we need to, as an industry, start calling it gender wellness. I experienced for the first time in August an
yes.
all women's wellness resort. It was only women, and there are very few of them in the world. And I have to tell you, I had massive takeaways from that one as well.
But we need to catch up on that one. Very
We will.
curious what you have to share. Thank you very much for sharing your takeaways with us. And I think those are great takeaways. Let's come back to today's topic. And when we had our pre-talk, Alina, for today's talk, you talked at one point about holistic and what it really does mean to you, and but also what a definition is of it. And you mentioned how our industry can really be much more efficient at applying an holistic approach, not just to treatments, but to the entire wellness facilities and the guest journey. Could you share with our audience a little bit your take on holistic
Sure.
treatments and holistic approach?
Of course. Well, I'm a big etymology buff. So I'm always looking at to find out what the origins of words are and what they really mean, because I think that's important to get sort of an insight on what is it that we want and how do we want to shape certain conversations. So I think that if you often ask 10 people what holistic is, I would say that more often than not, there are different definitions from everyone. And that's normal, because I don't think we really know what that means. I mean, traditionally speaking, holism means a whole, right? All the parts together that comprise the whole, without which, if you didn't have them, they wouldn't be effective. So, I mean, just very quickly, if we go down the lane, it wasn't until Rene Descartes, Cartesian method, I am, I think, therefore I am, basically the father of the scientific method and the father of, of all cartography mapping, right? Basically helped us to figure out the little bits and pieces, and how can we study the little bits and pieces so that we understand the whole, because the whole we've already gotten from the various systems. So we've, all the way back to the Tao, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, naturopathy in Europe, Mayan, traditional Arabic and Islamic medicine, and they're all systems. That is to say, it's just like the allopathic system in the West, which uses the scientific method, the evidence-based method. But these systems, they were effective, but they lack the understanding of the small parts so they can relate them to the whole. So I think if we look at holism in that way, then we realize that really holism means when we're not missing something. And what is it when we're not missing something? I dare say that when we think of creating programming, the experience, and what we do in our industry, we need to think about, first and foremost, what is the I experience? Not just what I think somebody needs, but what someone really needs, because I am having the experience. Then that experience goes into a we space, that is to say, a collectivity of more than one person. That is experienced very differently. If you go into group dynamics, if you go into retreats, it's a different ball game. And I think those are all sort of, not to get too geeky, but they're all internal spaces. There is to say, we can't really see them, but we have to think about them, even though we can't see them. How do the dynamics work? Then if we look at the other side of everything that is sort of on the external, then we need to think about what it is that we can prove that is effective, evidence-based wellness, something that we can observe. And most importantly, where does this all sit? So the system in which it sits, which is not just the place, which refers to the culture, which refers to, the city, which refers to the locality, one size does not fit all. And sometimes it might not be best to do Ayurvedic treatments
Very
in
true.
a certain place, because you have to look at where you are, right? So maybe Ayurveda might not be the best thing to do in Norway or something like that, right? So I mean, of course, I'm being extreme, but I think it really is inviting the question to ask oneself, what assumptions am I working with when I design a program, when I design an experience? What might that person be experiencing internally? How is it reflected on the group? What is it that I can see that I can do that actually I might track that it works? We'll talk about that in a minute. And where does it all sit in the context of where it sits? And to me, that's holism.
Thank you so much. And I think that as much as many spa directors have embraced a holistic treatment, this really goes further and applies the well-being of mind, body, and spirit to the whole experience, and not just to the 60 minutes of the treatment in a treatment room. So I really do love this approach. Now, what many of our attendees want to learn about today is evidence-based wellness. It starts to be more and more around as a terminology. Could you tell us more about it and what this means? And also, I think it would be great to understand what is the actual outcome that we're aiming for. And additionally, it would be amazing if you could share some examples maybe of evidence-based wellness offerings that you have come across in spas already, to make it a little bit more real for our listeners to understand what that path is towards futuristic approach of spa.
I think it's a great question, Verena, and I think it's the question of the answer that the time has come. So I often see in different offerings sort of big errors, not for lack of interest to make it right, but just for lack of awareness that these type of things exist. So I always start with the basics, which is basically chronobiology. That is to say, chronobiology is a science of what we all know as, colloquially, as circadian health science. In other words, our bodies, each and every one of our cells has a 24-hour clock. We go according to 24-hour cycles, but different animals may do 6 months. Think of the bird, the bear hibernating and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And also nature does the same. So when we plan, we should be aware of what is the season that this is planned, what time of the day, because the clock and our bodies are made to really maximize certain activities, certain experiences, therapies, and treatments according to the time of day. And whenever possible, and that goes alongside with, okay, what are the treatments and the therapies and the experiences that I'm thinking about doing when the body is in sympathetic mode? Well, it's very different than when the body is in parasympathetic mode, which starts towards the evening. So while, you may think about that to provide input, to provide some kind of, for the guests, better understanding of what's being done to them, what recommendations can be made, and also the sequence that you may decide to do a treatment or an experience. So the last thing you want to do is do a parasympathetic or something that will provide parasympathetic stimulation and then end with a sympathetic. That makes no sense, because you are bringing the body down into relaxation and then reactivating it. So these are some of the things that I think are really important to think about. And you only know this through evidence-based wellness. That is to say, you go into the science, you translate the literature and when I talk about the literature, I'm talking about scientific studies, I'm talking about research, and it goes into what's called a translational phase. That is to say, there's something called translational medicine. I've been working in it since 2015. My two big mentors are Jerry Bodecker and Dr. Sergio Pecorelli, and they work with evidence, and especially Professor Bodecker, he works with a lot of evidence. And if you go onto the GWI site, you'll see all the evidence that is available from all the ancient traditions for healing. And I think that that's really important, that we look at that and not just simply follow something because it's been done before. Yes, it's important to look at the ROI. It's important to look at yield and to look at all those things. But I think creatively, those things can be tackled in such a way that to continue to provide benefit to the end user, and really helping them understand that what they are receiving comes from a place of knowledge, not just something that I decided off the top of my head because it was a gimmick, but really because it's knowledge, and that we know about, and also the knowledge that we know about in the ancient wisdoms. But now we have scientific evidence to prove what the ancients always knew about.
And I mean, I could listen to you for hours on this topic, and I really find it fascinating how those ancient medicines that have been there for centuries suddenly come in our modern time into something that is very meaningful and very, yeah, the thing to do if it's done rightly at the right time of the day, at the right sequence of services, for example, as you said. And I think that what you just touched base on, which is bio, like let's say the rhythm of the day and how we can tailor our spa menus for our guests to that in order for them to have a bigger healing, a deeper healing, a better takeaway. I think that is something that the industry has a huge opportunity with.
Oh, it's massive, massive. Because then the sky is the limit. And then you don't have a polarity of one over the other. And then we really are in the space of holism. We're not just, kind of throwing out the word because it sounds good. We are being holistic because we're taking the best of both worlds.
The only thing is, which I see as an opportunity on the other side, is the education for our spa leaders.
Yes, that's massive. So, I've had the experience where I went in and I implemented this new menu for property in the Middle East. And I did it with MindBody Wellness Technologies. And I literally took their menus that were beautifully done menus that were, they chose these modalities from all over the world, and they created these, very beautiful, spa menu. And then I thought, well, we need to keep taking them on a journey because their whole USP is the journeys from all over the world. And then I matched them to the technologies because at the end of the day, what these, MindBody, I call them MindBody Wellness Technologies, and they are MindBody because they involve the mind and the body. And to a certain extent, and for those who are tapped into that space, also the spirit. So all of these actually take from these ancient modalities, and you can track them. So if you're talking about, binaural vibroacoustics, all it's doing is through a technological process. And by the way, I always love to sort of this parentheses, because technology, the true meaning of technology, which comes from the Greek techna, all it means is the artful application of knowledge. And I think this is such the incredible opportunity to be super creative in our industry. Okay, how can we continue to artfully apply what we already know? And one of the ways it gets done is through MindBody Wellness Technologies. Far infrared is a way to understand the way that we harness this idea of the light, of the sunlight. At the end of the day, you actually could just lie naked in the sun with a red gauzy fabric, which would filter out all the harmful UVA and grasp the very good red light, which is what we have in red light therapy. If we do vibroacoustics technology, they're tapping into the idea of sound healing. Well, we've had that with gongs. We've had that with music. I mean, the Kalani plates are examples of this, right? And how you see that the sound is shaping the sand. You could also do that with water. It's called cymatics. I mean, it's just endless, the kind of stuff that we can really do to make the offering exciting. We can cross-pollinate from the performing arts. We can cross-pollinate from every conceivable. And by the way, the hospitality industry, i.e. hotels, are beginning to do this already. They are cross-pollinating offers into restaurants, into all kinds of things to make it experiential, exciting, get people buzzing about it. They'll come back if they feel good, no matter what. And I think we need to take a big sort of cue from that in wellness.
It comes down to looking at your menu, not what have I done yesterday, but what could I do tomorrow? And I think that in terms of spa wellness menu offerings, I think that there lies the actual big opportunity to move forward into a more exciting and more healing and more impactful future when it comes to healing and wellness.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that is a great insight on what evidence-based wellness can do for our spas. Now, obviously, and I mean, I've been a spa director for many years. I've had this feedback often and we're challenged with that wellness technology or technology in general is very expensive. And you touched base on that a little earlier already when it comes to ROIs, return on investment. Have you seen some spas really excelling in integrating wellness technology into their operations and had success financially as well?
Yes, in certain cases, yes. And I think it boils down to, and you've touched upon that already. So you talked about the education of the people internally. So I invite us to take a step back first and foremost. So I think what we all need to understand is that this area is really still in its infancy stage. That is to say, we are still in the early adaptation phase. So they have been the pioneers. They're already here, both from the manufacturing side and from the business model side, that are implementing this very creatively in their offering. And I think it also comes from what we know as necessity is the mother of invention. That is to say, when you don't have people who can do treatments and services, well, you got to turn to the next best thing, and that is a technology. So a technology doesn't call in late, it doesn't call in sick, it doesn't sort of mess up your projections for the day, the week, or the month. It is there, and so the question then becomes, as we are talking about an early adaptation of a knowledge, right, of an artful application of a knowledge in these technologies, is that we need to, I think, triangulate when we think about these things. We need to, first of all, have an idea of what is it that we want to do with these technologies. Like, look at your USP. What does your spa or wellness resort stand for? What is, and you marry those with what you already offer. Then how is it that you mix them in a hybrid way? It's almost like a delicious menu where you plan and you curate, your entire taste. And then you seamlessly weave a customer journey or an experience, right? And that means you have to know what technology you're purchasing and why is it valuable. What are they doing? Is it something that you can stick with the evidence? Do they have any science behind it? Do they have people who advise them that have science? I mean, all these different things. So it starts with that. It starts with the USP. What do I have? What do I need? And what do I really want to buy? And why do I really want to buy it? Then the second piece is you need to go in there and you need to have a huge buy-in to all these people in your facility. They need to understand how it works. They can't be afraid of it. Do you know how many times I've been to these places where you have a machine that's sitting in the corner of the spa, and then that you go to the front desk and you say, "Oh, can I? We can't. It doesn't work." No, it works perfectly fine. It's just that they're afraid to use it, and B, they don't know how to sell it because the average person doesn't understand it. If you put it together in a sexy way in a menu, it'll be exciting. People will offer it. So you have to, and I don't like the word training because it's like you train animals or like a papagayo, but you educate. The important thing is to have people understand what this is so they can then utilize it in a different way that makes sense to them with that understanding. Then you have to bring in your marketing and communications. You have to bring in your senior management.
Just want
And
to
you
say
have
that.
to, and you have to program for the future, because if that person who did all of this leaves, well, guess what? You're back to ground zero. So, I think one has to develop, and many manufacturers are willing to work with you on that. But, it is a burgeoning sector in our industry. So people are learning through trial and error. But these are my big three pieces: USP matched with what you need, communicate, 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 and least but certainly not last, educate, educate, educate.
Very well said, Alina, and very inspiring. And I am hopeful that we will see more and more of these technologies in our industries over the years to come. I'm convinced of that, actually. And I know that you shared some of your thoughts on future opportunities within our industry with the Spa Business Handbook of 2023 recently. And could you share with our audience maybe some predictions that you see for the years to come?
Yes, I think that this notion of spa, like some sort of conceptual piece of real estate that's relegated to the corner of the room, that classically GMs have thought it's this annoying thing we have to live with. So we don't pay attention to it. We rarely give it the necessary leeway to really make a huge impact on the property. But I think that that's already starting to make its way differently, because you see in wellness communities that that is the thing that makes home buyers want to buy a piece of real estate in a wellness community. So that's shifting. But I think for me, what's really exciting is, I I'm really I want to talk to the idea that why is it that we have to relegate a spa or a wellness experience to the corner of a property? I'd rather like to see something very immersive. Look, I've seen some formats that are beginning to do that. Like I've seen some really cool things of, you walk into this space where there's a knipe sort of area of little islands, all done very sensorially with the right light, with the right mood, which creates a whole experience of knipe therapy, where a lot of people sit in this room and they talk and they chat, and then they have their knipe therapy. That's experiential. It's also a little bit more immersive. It's also very, very integrated with the design, the architecture of the space. So these integrated experiences, which are actually holistic eventually, is what we need to think about. How do we marry that? So instead of doing sensorial tasting, why don't we do a sensorial tasting, blindfolded? I mean, I know it sounds crazy, and there are formats who have been doing that. That's not new. But how is it that we integrate it into the space? How is it that we have very, thoughtful, beautiful meals that can be healthy, vegan, which, my God, the sky is the limit in what's being done here.
Yeah.
And let's make it fun. Let's make it almost, I don't want to, I mean, I shouldn't say this, but it's almost like the idea of a wellness fun house without it being a fun house. I don't want to degrade it, but we are human beings and we're meant to laugh. We're meant to enjoy. It doesn't have to be so serious all the time. And I think if we really crack that nut, we're going to be in a very good place as an industry.
Sounds great. And I mean, there's one thing that I hear out, that the future of wellness is very promising, which is very, very exciting and good to hear. Now, let's see. I saw that there were some questions in our chat, and let's go to them. Nigel Franklin joined us, the spa whisperer who loves being here, and he loves putting contemporary evolving science behind traditional healing modalities. We spoke about that, which is great. And it's really what you just shared, Alina, the key to a more long-lasting, successful spa menu, I would say. Evolving is joining us and says, yes, spirit is important. We also touched base on that. Michaela Henke-Silent, he says, how exciting for the team and the guests, rhythms, powerful thoughts. Yes, agreed with that. Sandy Abram says that Alina is a wealth of wellness info. I know why I invited you today.
Well, I love all of these people. And Nigel, I haven't met you yet, but I really am curious to meet you. So hopefully one day.
Nigel was on the wellness talk as well. I believe last year in spring, a really great wellness hero as well. And then we have Jonathan Pledger, who says, I agree, education is hugely important. And there is so much more that can to be done. I think we all agree. And I mean, it's the key. It's the key to the success of the implementation, or this moving forward towards integrating the science from ancient modalities in combination with modern technology. And yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say something. I want to give a shout out to my previous colleague, Fran Lugo, who's on the call from Mexico, because Fran was the person who was the spa director, the wellness director at a property where I won the award in 21. And Fran knows very well the idea of how you integrate the science with the ancient healing tradition, that is to say, the knowledge of the ancient healing tradition. And I can tell you it's very doable, very, very doable. And more so, and I think going back to what you just said about the technologies, I think we've only just begun. And I think there's enormous, enormous opportunity. And that is a train that has left the station.
Fantastic. The Spa Sisters podcast gives us a heart with us and loves what we have been discussing. Evolving says as well that educating is key, and most people have great loads of stress and have disconnect from the cycles of Mother Earth within our bodies. And I think she is not alone. I mean, those guests are not alone. And that's why we're talking about this, because I think we feel this all, that there is a huge opportunity reconnecting with Mother Earth and its cycles. And then we have Govel, who says, she congratulates you, una experta en toda la extensión de esa palabra. I'm sorry, I believe it's Spanish. I'm Italian, I'm not sure. Una enciclopedia del wellness. That's a compliment, Alina.
Thank you.
I mean, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing and being so active on our live chat today. Well, thank you all so much for your questions and your participation. And we already come to our 30-minute mark. And nevertheless, as you know, at the end, before we say goodbye, I would love to wrap up also today's session with some takeaways. My first takeaway is really that holistic spas need to think more as a whole, and not only holistic treatments, but embrace the entire facility and guest journey. My second takeaway would be that spas have this great opportunity to merge today's offer with futuristic approach and ancient modalities by having and challenging their own spa menus, wellness offerings in order to envision the spa menu of tomorrow. And then succeeding on implementing wellness technology requires communication, education, and obviously choosing location what makes the most sense in order to be able, which is feasible, achieve incredible ROIs. Alina, again, I could continue in speaking with you for hours, and I'm so grateful that you had accepted to be my co-host today. And I loved your insights and tips, and personally, I learned a lot. And I'm sure that this helps also the audience to understand a little bit more how we can take an active role in shaping the spas and wellness facilities of tomorrow for a deeper healing experience for our guests. Thank you so much, Alina.
Thank you so much, Verena, really, for inviting me. And I always love to talk to you because you're also so knowledgeable and so spot on to find the right questions at the right moment. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching today's edition of Spa and Wellness Talk or for watching the replay. I truly hope you found your takeaways that will help you to get your spa and wellness operation future ready. Spa and Wellness Talk will be back in about 3 months in February 2024. Can't believe it's getting already close to next year. And I invite you in the meantime to follow VLF Spa Consulting on Instagram and LinkedIn. And as usually, the recording of today's talk will be available on this YouTube channel, to which you can subscribe as well. With this, thank you for having taken the time to join Alina and me today. And until very soon. Goodbye.
Thank you.